5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Last December, in lockstep with our NATO allies, the U.S. determined that Russia is in material breach of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or INF, treaty. This followed determinations by the State Department in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017 that Russia has failed to comply with its INF obligations. As one of only 2 parties in the agreement, and the only party currently playing by the rules, the U.S. is subject to severe restrictions on our military capabilities faced by no other nation on Earth. This problem is especially acute in Asia, where the U.S. must project power across vast distances and with enormous logistics chains. While the original treaty was about intermediate-range nuclear weapons, China has seized upon the potential of conventional missiles of intermediate ranges, which are likewise banned under the INF. The Chinese military has invested in thousands of conventional ground-based missiles, roughly 95% of which would be prohibited by the treaty if Beijing were a signatory. This arsenal puts us on the wrong side of the cost competition. As you can see from this chart, from the Nonpartisan Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, the U.S. military is dangerously outranged at intermediate distances. No matter how capable or affordable our ships, our fighters, and bombers will never be cheaper than ground-based missiles. This is a recipe for disaster both in war and in peacetime competition. So 2 years ago, to remedy this, Congress began R&D funding for ground-based conventional intermediate missiles. Now that the United States is months away from a post-INF world, Congress is now threatening to undo this progress by zeroing out R&D for these purely conventional missile systems. To be clear, early-stage R&D on intermediate missiles is allowable under the treaty. It's why we've been doing it for over the past 2 years. So the cuts contained in this bill already go beyond what is mandated by the agreement. It would not only keep us unilaterally tied to a treaty that no one else is honoring, but it would also expand the scope of our commitment by blocking R&D funding. Mr. Speaker, this is insanity. No other conventional weapon system would ever be held to this standard. We wouldn't do it for planes. We wouldn't do it for ships. We wouldn't do it for tanks. Yet we are doing it for missiles that would provide credible, dispersed, and lethal firepower. I understand that my colleagues, some on both sides of the aisle, have concerns on nuclear weapons. I understand. I appreciate that. I would welcome a conversation with any of my colleagues about prohibiting R&D dollars from going towards intermediate-range nuclear missiles. But despite the INF name, this amendment has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. This is all about conventional deterrence. Go talk to the men and women who are downrange in Indo-Pacific Command, who are on a daily basis dealing with the real-world ramifications of an increasingly unfavorable conventional military balance, and they will tell you, and indeed they have told us on the Armed Services Committee, that deploying intermediate-range conventional missiles in Asia would help increase our deterrence and therefore improve our ability to avoid war, which is what it's all about. Madam Chair, I cannot be clear enough. By zeroing out R&D funding for intermediate-range conventional missiles, this bill undermines our ability to credibly deter aggression. And whatever you think about nuclear weapons, these cuts make them more important to American defense planning, not less, by reducing our options to restore growing imbalances in conventional power. This is a mistake I fear will cost the United States in more ways than one. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, which would restore funding for R&D for intermediate-range conventional missiles and provide the department with the flexibility it needs to pursue this critical capability. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my